Good morning. I'm so excited to be here today to talk to all of you guys about my journey and how I ended up where I am and how I dared to be different. I'm going to start my story off with how I wanted to be a dolphin trainer when I was 5. And when I was 7, I wanted to be a Lego architect. And when I was 13, I was going to be a fashion designer. By 15, I was going to be a fencer. And now, in my 30s, I'm an entrepreneur and I own a construction company. So my journey started as 5-year-old Chrissy Grillo, who loved dolphins. I knew everything about dolphins. I read every book from the Wyckoff Public Library about dolphins. I loved swimming, and I loved the ocean. So of course, those were the things I was good at, so I was going to be a dolphin trainer. Then I realized my lack of dolphins and having access to dolphins, so it wasn't really going to be the best career choice. So around 7, I decided that I was really good at building elaborate houses with Legos. And not the fancy Legos that you guys have. The Legos that I had when I was little were 1980s Legos, and there were about 4 different colors: red, yellow, green, blue. And I was pretty good at building houses. I would, sometimes they had doors and windows, sometimes they didn't. They had landscape. It was awesome. And then in the early 90s, the market for Lego architecture and Lego houses, it crashed. So I had to reconsider my career path. Clearly, the next step for a Lego architect that's out of work is fashion design. I started at a sewing school as a student when I was 5 years old, and when I was 12, I started working there. So by 13, I had all the expertise to become a fashion powerhouse. So how did a 13-year-old fashionista become a 30-year-old entrepreneur in a male-dominated field? I had a pretty traditional childhood. I grew up here in New Jersey. I lived with my mom and my dad and my younger brother. My mom, she was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was a second-generation business owner. My younger brother, from the day he understood what a job was, knew that he wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps and own his own business. Clearly, I lacked some direction when I was younger, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I did know that my dad loved his job. He went to work every day looking forward to work. He didn't drag his feet. He came home happy. He talked about his employees, his projects, his jobs. So he owned a furniture dealership, and what that is a company that sells office furniture to businesses, schools, and other companies like that. Everything was pretty normal, and then in middle school, my life kind of took a little bit of a change, and my parents got divorced, and it was challenging. It was different, and things had changed. So going back to my sewing school days, I loved going there, and I went there as a kid, and I learned so much more than just sewing. I learned manners, I learned etiquette. I don't chew gum now because the sewing school teacher, Mrs. Fawcett, told me that was unladylike. Mrs. Fawcett was a 60-year-old retired teacher, and in her 60s, she was newly widowed, and she decided to open up her own business, a sewing school in Midland Park. And I was fortunate enough to be, some of her first students, and I learned so much from her. Patience, like I had said, manners, etiquette, and I knew she was special. I didn't understand that she was a woman that was so ahead of her time. I do now, but then I didn't understand that she was so daring to start something from nothing. She also taught me that girls could do anything that boys do. That sounds a little weird because she was a sewing school teacher, but she encouraged boys to join the sewing school. And she taught all the girls that that was completely normal and that boys should have the skills and the tasks that you learn in an environment like that. So it taught me that if there was something that boys were doing after school or over the summer, that it was something that I could do too because it didn't matter. So I learned a lot from her just about gender norms and how it didn't matter. I could do what I wanted even though I was a girl. So as I mentioned, when my parents divorced when I was in middle school, things were really complicated and confusing. And my mom went to a lot of, the mentors in my life, including my teachers in my middle school and Mrs. Fawcett. And Mrs. Fawcett had the idea that maybe I should start working at the sewing school because it would be a good distraction and it would give me some direction. I was so excited when she asked me to work there because it kind of resonated to my dad going to work every day and being really happy with what he was doing. I couldn't imagine my first job being somewhere that I loved to go there anyway. And I loved to sew, I loved being around the students, and it was something that was such an influential part of my life to be part of what this woman was building and this legacy that she was making. My days were filled with threads and thimbles and sewing machines and working with countless students that also taught me so much. Working at the sewing school ended up leading me to make some different choices as I grew up. So in high school, I joined my high school's fashion elective, and it was the first year that they had the program at my school, and I thought I was just going to join the class and be another student, and I would probably do well because I had my background working at the sewing school. But little did I know that my teacher didn't really have a lot of knowledge because it was the first year we had a fashion program. So I ended up taking a leadership position in the class, and I'd go to class early. I would fix the sewing machines. I would help my classmates with complicated projects. I made my own prom dress. I helped some of my friends make their own prom dresses, and I loved fashion. So that's when I decided, going back to all these wonderful careers that I had when I was little, that I was going to do something in fashion design. And I was really excited to share with my mom and Mrs. Fawcett, two really powerful women in my life, what I was going to do when I was older. And I went to them and I shared this amazing news. And they were really excited, and they encouraged me to follow my dreams, but they also wanted me to make sure that I wasn't missing anything else that was available to me in my life. And I also think they might have thought about my past, career aspirations of, training sea-dwelling mammals and playing with plastic blocks. So I decided to take their advice because they always seemed to lead me in the right direction. And I started exploring different clubs and activities at my high school. And I found the stock market club and the fencing team. And two of these really untraditional choices ended up leading to me having lifelong friends that I made through those classes and programs, and also a scholarship in college. So I joined the fencing team, and it was not very popular at the time in my school. I encouraged friends to join with me, and we ended up being really good. It was really fun, and surprisingly, I think we all kind of thought we were going to do it to have a good time, and we ended up winning states twice. I was a varsity member of the team for 3 of my 4 years in high school, and I loved fencing, and it was something that was never even on my radar. As for the stock market club, I didn't know what club to join, so as I started exploring different clubs, I realized that all of my guy friends were part of the stock market club, and that there wasn't one girl in the club. So I decided, I knew nothing about the stock market, and frankly, I didn't even know if it was something I was interested in learning about, but I was annoyed that there were no girls, so I joined. And through that and fencing, I really blossomed into learning about new things, and I kind of got this bug about how fun it was to do things that were out of the box, because they were both two things that really blossomed into something pretty influential in my life. So, at this point in my life, I was around your guys' age, and everyone started asking me questions about what I wanted to do when I grew up, where I wanted to go to college, a million questions, and I thought that was really scary. I thought it was really overwhelming because my mom would ask me what I wanted for dinner, and I didn't even know what I wanted for dinner. How would I know what I wanted to be for the rest of my life? I know that before when Dr. Simmons asked you guys if you knew what you wanted to be, I was so surprised with how many of you raised your hands, and that's awesome. But sadly, I lacked a little bit of direction when I was thinking about what my choices were going to be after high school. So I started asking other people when I learned I was going to be speaking with you today about their career choices and how they were in untraditional careers, because I network with a lot of people in real estate and construction, and I was curious how they found their way to where they were. And everyone had some story that wasn't a straight line. It was kind of, a windy path of how they got to where they were. So if you are one of the people here that don't know what you want to do, you're not alone. I have a friend who was an aspiring actress. She started getting really wonderful opportunities in commercials, and her career was blossoming. And one day she woke up and she realized that's not what she wanted to do, and she moved back to the East Coast and she became a teacher. And she loves it, and she's so happy, and she can't imagine her life any other way. And she's super successful, but it wasn't exactly what she had envisioned her life being like when she was younger and made choices about college and your careers. So it's awesome that there's programs like this that can help you guys, because I didn't have a program like this when I was faced with these really important decisions. I started college tours and applications. Applications back then, I had to use my typewriter, and I was really bad at typing. I used a lot of whiteout. But I really lacked direction, and I applied to schools, and there was no continuity in my choices. I applied to some schools for fashion merchandising and fashion. I applied to schools for teaching because I loved kids and I loved working at the sewing school. And I applied to a school in Rhode Island called Bryan College for business. And I made that choice because my dad, remember, he was an entrepreneur and a business owner, and he wanted my brothers and I to follow in his footsteps. So I applied there more so to just kind of, compromise and move the conversation along. And I figured that if I got in there, that I'd have that conversation with my parents at that point in time. So it felt like years between when I mailed out those applications and went to the post office. My mom made me do all that stuff, and it felt so responsible. And waiting to hear back was probably some of the most anxiety-ridden days of my life, because not only was I waiting to see if I would get into college or the colleges that I had hoped and applied to, but I also didn't know, what if I was fortunate enough to get into them, what would I pick? Because I really didn't understand what I wanted to do or what was a good fit for me. I applied to big schools, I applied to small schools, I applied to local schools, I applied to schools that were plane rides away. And so clearly I was all over the place. I went to my guidance counselor and shared with her all the places I applied, and clearly that wasn't what she wanted to hear because it made no sense. So she asked me to go to my teachers and my fencing coach and my mom, and obviously I went to Mrs. Fawcett, the sewing school teacher, and I asked them all for their advice. And most of them just talked with me and helped me figure out the things that I was good at. And clearly, it wasn't dolphin training or Lego architecture, fashion designer, or fencer. They helped me realize some things about myself that I never could. And I had an aha moment. I love dolphins because, let's face it, I was 5 years old. And that wasn't a career choice for me. I loved Legos and building things with Legos because I liked organization. I liked space planning. And that was a little bit of foreshadowing that I actually liked construction. I liked fashion and fencing because I liked the leadership roles that I had in fashion and fencing. I loved fashion, and I still love sewing. But the reason that I thought I wanted to be in fashion and be a fashion designer was because of the leadership aspect that I had at my after-school job and the leadership that I had in my classroom at school. So all signs seemed to point to going to Bryan College. And all of a sudden, I had direction, and I was worried I was late to the game, and I went up to Bryan and I interviewed. And my guidance counselor told me to be myself and to share my story and explain why I thought I would be a good fit at Bryan. And I told them all about my job because it was such a big part of my life, not only because of my job, but because I had this strong female role model that, little did I know, was mentoring me to become a business owner one day. I shared with them about the fencing team and about how something that I encouraged my friends to do that turned out to be such an amazing experience for me. And I told them about joining the stock market club and how I learned so much. And the reason I joined, in a joking fashion, I shared with them I joined because there were no girls. And I just thought that was ridiculous. The next week, I got a phone call and a heads up that I would be admitted to Bryant and that I would be getting a scholarship because I was a female leader. And I never thought of myself as a leader. And when they called to share the news with me at the time, less than 30% of the college was female students. It was very business-centric, things like math, finance, accounting, and a lot of those types of careers seemed to have more men applying to this college. So I started thinking of myself differently because other people started thinking of me differently. And when I went to school in September, I joined a sorority, I joined several clubs, I took leadership roles in them. I became a leader in my classroom because I was learning things that I really enjoyed. I did well, better than I did well in high school too, but I actually really was excited about going to class and learning about management and marketing. I was a marketing concentration and a communications and psychology minor, and all of this shaped me into a person who absolutely loved my 4 years at school. I was then faced with, after feeling really comfortable, all these people in my life started asking me what I was going to do next. And I felt like I just went through that, but the 4 years went by super quick, and now I was faced with the idea of what I was going to be when I grew up, and what kind of job I was going to apply for, and if I was going to stay up in New England, or if I was going to come back to New Jersey. And again, I felt this heavy weight on my shoulders. And my dad came to me and asked if I was ready to start at the family business when I got home. And it just didn't feel right because I was a leader, right? And I was going to follow in someone else's footsteps. And it just didn't seem, it wasn't a bad choice, but it just didn't seem like the right choice for me. So my dad was actually really proud of me for sharing that and for making that decision. But he did encourage me as I started to apply for jobs that I would look for something in line and parallel to what he was doing. And to remind you, he sold office furniture, and he had a very large company. He had over 500 employees, and he sold a lot of office furniture. But I went out and I marketed myself in fields that were in line, with things that were to do with interiors and real estate. And I got a job in a flooring company, and they were headquartered in New York, and they were looking to open up a satellite office in New Jersey. And my boss and I were tasked with basically, they gave us a raw warehouse space and wanted us to turn it into a beautiful showroom. And that was in August after I graduated. And for the first couple months, I had to make really hard choices, and I had to do things that were kind of out of the box. I had to hire a warehouse manager, which was a really big deal for someone who just graduated college. I had to contact IT and technology people to help us wire the warehouse space. I had to choose finishes while I was learning all the products that I was going to be selling, because my job title was sales associate. But really, I was kind of a jack of all trades. And I almost was a mini business owner because I got to learn all about how to open something and how to start a business. So for a year, that went great until the headquartered office figured that New Jersey was too close to New York and that it didn't make sense for them to carry the overhead of another company so close to their headquarters. They offered me a job in the city, and although that sounded wonderful, it wasn't in the cards for me to commute in and out of Manhattan every day. So I declined the position, and I helped close. In 1 year, I helped open a business, and I helped close a business, selling everything from the light bulbs to the area rugs to the desk I sat at every day. So then I started to think that I really wanted to pursue a career that I had a say in the success, that I had a voice, that I could help make choices to help everyone else have a better day at work. I loved being a manager to the few people that had worked in this office, and because I had an awesome manager above me who gave me a lot of freedom and let me have a lot of responsibility. So I decided that I might as well explore being part of our family's business. And I went to my dad and I asked him how he envisioned my role there. And he looked back at me and said, well, why don't you tell me how you envision your role here? He said, go back and think about it, and we'll talk in a couple of days. And with my business knowledge and everything I learned at school, I came back to him with the business plan. And I thought it would be the best idea to open up a flooring division of his company that sold furniture, because when you bought furniture, you could really just make your whole space, you could upgrade your entire space and get new flooring. And that it would be a perfect in tandem company, and I could work with his other employees, and we would be able to offer his clients a whole nother service that they were missing out on. And my dad, I was so nervous, but he loved the idea. And for 4 years, I ran the flooring division, and it was going to be my forever career. And then in 2008, the economy took quite a hit, and construction and real estate were really struggling. So people weren't moving. They weren't moving their office space, so they weren't buying furniture. There was not a lot of new construction, so again, people weren't buying furniture. If anything, people actually were taking less space, and they were consolidating, and there were layoffs, and they were actually getting rid of furniture. So my dad and uncle were faced with a really challenging decision about what to do with all of their employees and their family business. And they decided to merge with another company, a competitor, and my dad and my uncle sold their ownership stake. And all of my coworkers, including my family, went to go work in this new work environment with this merger. And there wasn't really a home for me there. With the merger, it didn't make sense for them to carry this added service of flooring, and I, again, was tasked to close down a business. I stayed behind for 6 months in a really big empty building, and I helped sell everything again, from the light bulbs to the chair I was sitting in. And I had to make really tough phone calls about receivables and payables, and it was a really crazy experience. And to be 29 years old and have to be part of closing another business was a really crazy thing to wrap my arms around, but it was an awesome learning experience. And one other person was left behind with me, and her name's Marge, and Marge is now my business partner. And through this really challenging couple of months, we realized we worked well together. It was really high pressure. We never knew what would happen that day when we got to work, and we handled it great. Marge is 30 years my senior, and she has 3 children. Her oldest is my age. And other than my mom and Mrs. Fawcett, is probably the strongest woman that I know. She also didn't have a home in this merger, so the two of us, were left in the rearview mirror back at the other company, picking up the pieces and tying up loose ends of 40 years of other people's mistakes and other things like that. So it was really challenging. And my dad kept planting seeds about next steps for both of us. And I look back and I can see there was a little bit of planting seeds here and there about us opening a business together, because I think he saw how we got along so well and how we tackled tasks that were really challenging and were able to accomplish them because we worked well together. So Marge came to me one day and asked if I would consider being her business partner and opening a business that was in line with both of our experience and our time within the furniture industry. And we thought hard about what that would be, and we recognized our connections and our old coworkers, some of which went with this merger, some of which went to other competitors, and where we had connections and what we would be able to really succeed in. And we also started noticing in the marketplace, in construction and real estate, there was a big push for minority and women-owned businesses. And without even trying, we fit that bill, 2 women. So we ended up opening Global Installation Resources. And what Global Installation Resources is we build office furniture and related product. So my employees are union carpenters. I have about 30 full-time union carpenter employees. And then when we're busy, I take on as many as 70 additional. Last year, we had 102 employees. I have one staff person, an admin. She works for us a couple days a week and helps us with our bookkeeping. So what I do and what Marge does every day is, Marge is an accounting major. She went to college for accounting. She went to Rutgers. And when she graduated, she joined at the time, one of the big 8 accounting firms. And she loves numbers. And I don't. I try to, and it's important as a business owner to understand numbers, but that was just not my strong suit. So I found someone to partner with who loved the thing that I struggled with. And what Marge does day to day, in addition to just our general accounting, Marge does our estimating. So what happens is, if a client is going to furnish a space, Marge will come up with the calculation of how many men or women, how many hours, how many days it would take to put together, the project, and works off a floor plan to figure that out. She then follows through and does a project management role to make sure that we meet that criteria and that we're doing it in line with how she estimated the project. What I do is I run our human resources department, so I handle our payroll. I'm the liaison between the union and my employees and my company. I do all of our union benefits and our benefits for our employees. I also handle all of our technology needs. That's something and those are things that my business partner, things that she's a little scared of, just like I'm a little scared of numbers sometimes. And most importantly, I work on our business development and our networking and our sales and marketing. I handle our social media and things like that. I am part of a lot of organizations, which Patrick mentioned before, just regarding Commercial Real Estate Women of New Jersey, Collaborative Women in Construction. Through those organizations, I network with a lot of the time women in our industry, and I look to see how I can help them and they can help my company grow and connect me with the type of people that I look to partner with every day. I'm also responsible for our partnership with with the Philanthropy Girl Scouts of Northern New Jersey, and we also, we really encourage young girls like you to take, daring decisions and make leaps to look into different kinds of careers that most women normally don't or don't consider. Just because you're a girl, it shouldn't matter. And that pretty much is what we do. I also am responsible for maintaining our minority certifications, which basically means women, minorities, veterans, and other small business owners sometimes have a harder time getting an opportunity to be at the table. And the state and certain organizations help you certify and validate that your business is a woman-owned business. And I leverage those certifications to help my business partner and I get the opportunity to prove that we're just as worthy and just as good and can do just as good of a job as any of our competition. And that pretty much in a nutshell is what I do and how I got here. I'm really proud of my company. I'm married and I have a 2-year-old, and I can't wait to share with him my story one day, because I never thought that I would go to work in construction boots and a hard hat sometimes. And granted, when I was 5, I thought I'd be in like a wetsuit or something, but I never thought I would be here where I am, and I'm proud of some of the decisions that I made and the people that I surrounded myself with, specifically the strong mentors who helped me realize things about myself that I never could. And I hope that all of you surround yourselves with people that are lifting you up and helping you make hard and tough decisions, because life is so unexpected, and it's not, like I said before, it's not a straight path to what you're going to be and who you're going to be when you grow up. And you're so lucky to have programs like this to help you find the map to get to where you're going to be your best. So I just thank you so much for letting me share my story with you. And I'm happy if anyone has any questions about construction or entrepreneurship or dolphin training. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.